Welcome to Dollar Gujarati. This is a show about Gujarati entrepreneurs and businessmen and the stories behind their success in America. We're extremely excited about our season finale with our guest today, Mr. Vijay Goradia. Mr. Vijay was born in Mumbai, and that was where he started his first company at the age of 17. He is the founder of Vinmar International, which is a global distributor of chemicals and polymers. Vinmar markets petrochemicals in over 100 countries across the world and has an annual revenue in excess of $5 billion. Mr. Vijay is also the founder of Pratham USA. This is the largest international educational NGO which has helped millions of children get an education. So, welcome, Mr. Vijay, and thank you for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me.
My first question to you is related to a ticket that you bought a few years ago to travel into space with Virgin Galactic. So did you have an interest in space before deciding this?
I have an interest in pushing myself into areas that I am not naturally inclined towards. And I enjoy adventure sports. So I've done skydiving, hang gliding, bungee jumping, ultralights, and you name it. I've done many of these somewhat adventurous sports. And I figured I might as well try something different. So I signed up to go into space, yeah.
Wow. If you want a companion, then I think all of us are willing to come along with you.
Well, there's no suitcase to carry, otherwise I'd put you in the suitcase and take you with me. But as you may have heard, there'd be 6 passengers to a flight, so
Yeah.
I'll have other companions with me.
Yeah. Right. So you were 17 when you started your first company. It was, in fact, a ploy to get extra pocket money from your father. So tell us about how you got carried away into this world of business and entrepreneurship at the age of 17.
Yeah, like you said, I wanted some more pocket money, and my father wouldn't give it to me. So I said, fine, I'll start my own business. And so I had just graduated from high school at the time and joined college. Luckily, I had gotten good marks, so I got into a good college. But then this whole idea of wanting to make some money led me to change the college, and I started taking classes early in the morning at 6 o'clock, and started my first factory along with my brother. And my father was the first customer. So, but anyway, and I worked very hard, long hours, 6 days, 7 days a week, while I was still studying, and managed to finish my undergrad and then work full-time in the business. We had relative success, my brother and I, and it was fun. I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, and then I decided I was too much in a rut, and there had to be more to life than just making money.
So at this point, what did you decide to do? You were earning good money at that time. You've already established yourself as a businessman. The normal path which most people would have taken would be to continue growing their business. But you decided to take a break from your business and travel the world.
Yes. Luckily, I had a good friend who I was able to persuade to join me on this crazy trip to start hitchhiking from India with no money. to Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, Greece, and a whole lot of other countries in East Europe, and then on to West Europe.
What inspired you to take this trip without any kind of money with you?
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say any money because we started with $70 in our pocket, so we had a little bit of money. The whole idea was to accomplish a few things. One was to experience the sights and sounds and different cultures and music and everything else, and to experience it in a way that you wouldn't really experience if you traveled luxuriously, because then it's from one hotel to another and from one city to another. The whole idea was to stick your thumb out and ask for a ride, and whoever stopped and gave us a ride to go wherever that person was going, whether that person or the ride giver was riding a truck or a Land Rover or a car. It didn't matter.
What did you learn from these experiences, and did these travels inspire you to go to America?
It didn't inspire me to go to America, but as I always tell young people when I talk to them, the lessons I learned and the experiences that I got from that 10 and a half month hitchhiking trip were some of the best lessons I ever learned that made me a better person, a better human being, and a better businessman.
Could you share some of these learnings or an example of something that you learned?
Let me start with Afghanistan, for example. When we were uh, hitchhiking there, we were in the very northern part of Afghanistan, close to the Russian border. And my friend and I were asking for direction. And this guy spoke a little bit of English. And it turned out he was a school teacher. And we were trying to find a place to sleep. A little inn, these are inns where you just put your sleeping bag on and have a cover over your head, very basic. And he said, instead, why don't you come to my house and have dinner with me first? Now, this guy didn't know us from Adam. We were certainly not Muslims. And when we went to the house had no roof. The only food they had was a watermelon and some Afghan bread that he was happy to share with us. So that experience was amazing because the guy didn't know us from Adam, and yet, out of the goodness of his heart, he invited us to his house. People gave us rides, let us stay in their homes, fed us, and that reinforced trust in the society and human beings, trust in one another. And I mean, we went through, as you can imagine, many, many different experiences, mostly very uplifting and enriching, some life-threatening as well, but we survived. And those experiences taught me a few things. One is that there are more good people on this earth than there are not. Two, that it's better to trust than to live life not trusting others. And that let the other person prove that he's not trustworthy. Third, that I could survive in any situation where people didn't know me. Unlike growing up in Mumbai, somewhat sheltered, although we were a middle class family, we had our creature comforts and our reputation and so on. Here on this trip, nobody knew me. And yet, I was able to survive on my wits. And that taught me an important lesson, which was that I can survive in any condition and make it happen. So,
Oh yeah, these are some really profound learnings, I would say. So, so what is the story of your entry into America and earning your first US dollar?
well, so after the hitchhiking trip, I decided that I would get caught into the rut in India if I stayed there. And some of my siblings were already here in the US. And I had my green card, so I decided to migrate. And my hope was that I'd make a reasonable living to survive and then study music. And when I landed here, it was there was a major recession going on. Couldn't get any job. And frankly, I didn't try very hard either. And I then started calling some people in India to see if I could help them in any way. One of them asked me to go inspect a shipment of plastic material. And since he had never done business with this company here and wasn't sure if he was getting the right product. So I did go and inspect the product. He compensated me for my trouble. And I got to thinking and I said, yeah, maybe I can help some more people along the way. And so I started a brokerage business for plastic raw materials from my one-room apartment in New York. And I was very lucky. I managed to get some business going, again with the help of my brother in India. And then I realized that as a broker, after the first transaction, the customer and the supplier didn't need me because they could transact directly. So I decided to start my own business to source and sell on my own. But for that, I needed capital. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any office. I didn't have any employees. So I didn't even have a credit card. I didn't even have a gas station credit card in those days.
So, so how did you feel when you were in America in this kind of a situation where you had no money, no contacts, no credentials, and you had come from a relatively successful business of running your own factory in India? So how did you feel during those initial months?
Good question. It was a very humbling experience, as you can imagine. But again, I fell back on my 10 months of hitchhiking where I survived on nothing and met some really, really fantastic people. And that whole faith and confidence was what kept me going. And the first couple of months, I was lucky that I was able to stay with my friend in his one bedroom, one room, not one bedroom, one room apartment. So I didn't have to pay any bills at the time. For a couple of months, he was kind enough. And then, of course, I started my own little business. I got a small apartment, and it was there was no time to really be miserable or gloss over my challenges. I just had to make it happen.
So you said that somebody, like, you didn't have money, you didn't have a credit card, and so how did you get funding to start your business? You had met a Japanese company, as a person from a Japanese company. So how
Exactly.
did you meet him, and how did you convince him to put trust in you and make an investment?
Yeah, I guess the stars were aligned at the time, I guess. There was a visitor from India, a distant relative, who called me and said he was in New York and could he stay with me? And I, I, I didn't have a choice, frankly, because my brother from India called and said, "Hey, please let him stay." And so, anyway, as it happened, he knew this Japanese company, and the individual in this Japanese trading company in New York. So, and he didn't know his way around New York, so he said, "Can you accompany me and take me to his office?" And that's how we got introduced. And then I said, "Look, I have customers, I have suppliers, I know the business. If you support me, maybe you can make some money off of me as well." And it was very fortuitous because this gentleman was the head of the chemicals and plastics department, and his business was hurting at the time. And he was under a lot of pressure to record sales. So he says, "Fine, I'll support you, but all the payments have to come to us first so that we are protected. And then we'll charge a small commission and return everything else to you." I said, "Fine." So as it turned out, it was beneficial to his credibility within the company. And that relationship was wonderful. It lasted for a few years. And this gentleman was so well regarded as a result of this collaboration in the company that he eventually became one of the 12 directors of this $60 billion
Oh, wow.
Japanese company.
Wow. So this was, yeah, I mean, in a sense, very fortuitous that you met him. When you came to the US, you also had some of your family members here. Your siblings were here already, you said. Were they also involved in the company that you started?
No, not at all. My eldest brother was a scientist, and his entire mission in life was science. The one younger to him was a computer engineer, and he had a family, a young family, so he had a job. So he none of them were in business. And then my youngest brother was still in college doing his engineering degree.
So was this the initial founding of Vinmar?
Yes,
So this is when you registered the brand name Vinmar, and you started off as a brokerage firm, and then you moved to exporting chemical products, plastics mainly. And then, so my next question is, how does one scale this from a business to $1 billion in revenue? Because there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have started their own businesses and they are successful. But $1 billion is an outlier success. So, how did you scale the business over the years?
The first thing I realized about myself, as any entrepreneur should, is to recognize his strengths and weaknesses. I very early on recognized that I was not a very good manager. I also recognized early on that I was not very good with operations. And recognizing this, as soon as I could afford, I hired a couple of capable people who could complement me, who were good at operations, who had good managerial capabilities. That left me free to do what I thought I was good at, which was creating business. And so I traveled 7, 8, 9 months out of the year. And I'd go to countries I'd never been to, knowing nobody, just walking in the streets, observing people, how they live their lifestyles, how they live their lives, and then slowly understand the way business was done in that country. And then, if it made sense, I would then start making contacts with people who could be my customers in the country. And then after establishing initial business relationships, if the business was worth scaling up, then I'd go and establish an office there. And so for me, it was another adventure, just like my hitchhiking trip. I was able to combine my love for travel and love for getting to understand different cultures along with my business. So it was the best of both worlds. And I just kept replicating it.
Okay. So, how much of your success over the years do you attribute to your skills, your intelligence, your hard work, and how much to luck?
Yeah. So, as they say, luck comes to people who work hard for it. As to being smart and all that stuff, yeah, I mean, you have to have a bit of smarts, you have to be a bit lucky, but you have to work very hard to be successful. Very few people are relatively successful without working hard. Most of us have to work hard, and I'm no exception. But one of the things I tell people is that if you just practice good common sense, it goes a long, long way. So many people I see every day that just don't apply good common sense. And then I follow what I call my OLA principle. That's observe, listen, learn, and adapt. OLA. So, in the last part, adaptation is the most important of all four. But if you just follow these four things and put in practice every day in your life, it goes a long, long way in anything that you are trying to do, whether it's pursuing a hobby or your relationship or your business. All these four things go a long way.
Could you give us an example of something which is common sense, but you have seen people not having it?
Yeah, so I have a slide that I like to show when I go to school or college and talk to young people. One of my slides shows a floor where a person is painting the floor, and he goes all the way towards the end, but the door is exactly on the opposite side. So now he has to walk all over the paint to get to the to the door. That's common sense, right?
Yeah.
So, but in real life, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was at a Target store a few years ago, and I bought something worth $4.78. And I gave this person at the cash counter a $10 bill. And she gave me back $15.22. And I said, you gave me more than more than you should be giving me. She says, what do you mean? I said, you're giving me $10 more than you need to give me. She says, no, this is what the register says. So I'm just doing what? Now that's common sense, right?
Yeah.
But she saw I gave her a $10 bill. But people just a lot of times just rely too much on gadgets and lose sight of just using common sense. I felt bad for her because at the end of the day, she would have had to dig that out of her own pocket.
Yes, that is true. That's a great example. A few minutes ago, you said that you should trust people and then leave it up to them to prove their trust or their untrustworthiness. So, do you have like a mental model which you follow when you trust someone, maybe a client or when you're recruiting someone?
So, I've interviewed thousands and thousands of people around the world. During an interview, it's less of an issue of trust as much as understanding whether the person is exaggerating or maybe misrepresenting or potentially covering up something. So following the OLA principle, when you're doing face-to-face interviews, you observe body language, eye contact, hand movement, things like that. If the person's palm is sweating, these are telltale signs of, so that's observing. Then listening to what they're saying, but more than what they're saying, how they're saying. And if you're a good listener, people love to talk. So you just let them talk. And if they're embellishing, exaggerating, misrepresenting things, usually you find that they contradict themselves. And it's the same thing with customers, suppliers as well. But what I am trying to say is you don't go into a meeting, whether it's with a supplier, customer, business partner, or a potential employee that you're interviewing with an air of suspicion. Instead of that, go there with an open mind and believe that that person is an honest, decent person. and let them prove otherwise.
Trust and leave it up to them after that. You chose to go into the plastics and polymers industry. Was there any particular reason why you chose that, or it wouldn't have mattered what the industry was?
Yeah, to me, the product is incidental. It could have been widgets, it didn't matter.
So if you were to give some advice to Jaini, Atit, and me today, if we wanted to start something, would you point us in the direction of an industry or something else to start off?
But first of all, don't think about starting your own company or your own business because your parents or grandparents were businessmen or because they want you to start your own business. That's the first piece of advice I'd give. The second is don't pursue anything just to make money. I know a lot of people who are miserable in their lives. They've made money, but they're miserable. There's no point in going through life and making money, but then being miserable. If you feel you are destined, or if you feel you really enjoy starting your own venture, fine. Do something that is fulfilling in life. I can't say that do something that you should be passionate about, because a lot of times you don't know what your passions are until you get into it. But at least do something that you are not going to be miserable about. And don't do it just because it'll make you a lot of money. Money is an outcome. If you work hard, work smart, use common sense, then money will follow, success will follow. But even if you don't make a huge success out of your life, you won't be unhappy and miserable and then make people around you unhappy and miserable. If you're unhappy and miserable, I guarantee you that Janie will be unhappy and miserable.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So those are the few basic things. And as to whether you should pursue this business or that business, just go through the process of elimination on what you like and don't like, and what your strengths and weaknesses and your preferences are, and don't do anything that's going to destroy the environment or be harmful to others. It's simple, basic stuff.
Oh, yeah, this is great advice. So, what keeps you going today? Clearly, money is not the motivator. So, what keeps you waking up early every day in the morning to go into work?
Well, I spend quite a bit of time on philanthropy. It's always been very important to me. Even when I didn't have money, I was always doing something or another to help others. So philanthropy, I spend quite a bit of my time. Besides Pratham, we have a family foundation that my daughter runs, which I participate with her in several initiatives. And so I'm on the board of trustees of the Baylor College of Medicine here. I'm on the board of advisors of MD Anderson Cancer Institute, and other causes that we support. So that is very exciting, because through participating in these philanthropic activities, Yet I also learn a lot, learn amazing things. And take, for example, healthcare. And that's true for many other situations today, that we are at a convergence of a few very amazing things that are happening today with big data, artificial intelligence, progress in material sciences such as the use of nanoparticles and CRISPR technology for gene splice, gene editing, and so on. And then you have different means of creating and storing energy. So all of these are coming together at a speed that the world has never seen before. And so the next few years, the next decade, 2 decades, we're going to see some amazing, amazing inventions, developments that are going to take place that for the most part will be beneficial to the human race. And at the same time, there are also dangers, such as climate issues and so on. So for me, the most exciting thing is to get an exposure to a lot of these opportunities. And the best way for me, in my case, because I'm not a scientist by background, I don't have a PhD in computer science. So for me, the best thing is to look at investing in many of these opportunities and just to look at it from an investor's angle. We might look at 20, 30, 40 companies and may end up investing in one. But that exposure of looking at so many opportunities and then being able to talk to some of the best minds gets me excited.
Yeah, it does seem to be a really, really exciting job to do in a sense.
I'm a simple, ordinary Gujarati from Mumbai.
Yeah, I can say that we are definitely inspired right now. Let's do a short rapid fire. If you're ready, we can jump right into it. What's your favorite adventure sport? The one that you had the most fun in?
Well, I've had fun with skydiving, bungee jumping, and then I also do some serious hiking every so often.
Awesome. If you were to start hitchhiking today, like you did so many years ago, where would you go first?
Well, hitchhiking or hiking, I wouldn't hitchhike. Much more unsafe than my days of hitchhiking in the 70s. So I would not hitchhike anywhere nor recommend hitchhiking to anybody.
Okay. So where would you go hiking?
I have done hiking in the Amazon, in Brazil. I've hiked, so that's really very wild and primitive.
Yeah.
I've done that in Costa Rica. And then I've also done hiking in places like Italy and Germany. But there are some places in India that I'd like to go hiking in the Himalayas for a while. I've seen so little of Gujarat. So that's another place that I'd love to do some hiking and trekking. And then there are a couple of places in France, like Chamonix, that I have not been able to do yet. So I'd like to do that. I've done some hiking in the Pacific Northwest, but there's still plenty of places there that are just so pretty that I'd like to do.
Any book that you would recommend, or any book that you've gifted a lot to other people?
I am I have a bad habit of reading 6, 7, 8 books at the same time, not finishing one and then taking up another. So, for example, right now I have a book that I'm learning to play bridge. Then I have a book called Heirs to the Forgotten Kingdom. It journeys into the disappearing religions of the Middle East. Then I have a book called The 15%, Overcoming Hardships and Achieving Lasting Success. Then I'm rereading this book called The Infidel. You may have heard of this, by Ian Hershey. And then I have a book called The Mortal Republic, How Rome Fell into Tyranny. A lesson to be learned for all the die-hard Republicans.
Yeah. Wow, this is a lot of good book suggestions and a lot of hope to the people who don't complete their books. If you had a gigantic billboard that would, like broadcast a message to the rest of the world, what would it say and why?
Be humble and be good to everyone.
Awesome. What is the most Gujarati thing about you?
The most Gujarati thing about me is that my comfort food is khichdi and curry and papad. So I don't think you can be any more Gujarati than that, right?
I completely agree. This is such a common thread. It's the same for me. It's the same for many of the guests who we've already asked. Khichdi curry is definitely top of the mind.
And my wife, although she's not a Gujarati, she now makes wonderful doklas and all kinds of Gujarati dishes for me. And she's trained our housekeeper to cook these things as well, including very thin Gujarati rotis. So.
Oh, nice. Thank you so much for your time. And we really appreciated that you took the time out to speak to us.
Good luck to you guys. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. It was fun. Be safe.
Thanks for listening to the show this week. And if you want to ask us any questions or want to see someone specific on our show, write to us at dollargujarati@gmail.com. You can also tweet to us at dollargujarati. Make sure you don't miss any episode by subscribing to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or however it is that you get your podcast. I'm Dakshaday Shah, and you've been listening to Dollar Gujarati.